in our stand against injustice. Before we begin the program, we will be starting with a recitation of the Holy Quran, which will be recited by Brother Ali Raza Jafri.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. In the name of God, the most beneficent, the most merciful. يا أيها الذين آمنوا كونوا قوامين بالقسط شهداء لله ولو على أنفسكم أو الوالدين والأقربين إن يكن غنيا أو فقيرا فالله أولى بهما فلا تتبعوا الهوى أن تعدلوا وإن تلووا أو تعرضوا فإن الله كان بما تعملون خبيرا. O you who have believed, be persistently standing firm in justice, witnesses for Allah, even if it be against yourselves or parents and relatives. Whether one is rich or poor, Allah is more worthy of both. So, follow not personal inclination, lest you not be just. And if you distort your testimony or refuse to give it, then indeed Allah is ever with what you do, acquainted. يا أيها الذين آمنوا كونوا قوامين لله شهداء بالقسط ولا يجرمنكم شنآن قوم على ألا تعدلوا اعدلوا هو أقرب للتقوى واتقوا الله إن الله خبير بما تعملون. O you who have believed, be persistently standing firm for Allah, witnesses in justice, and do not let the hatred of a people prevent you from being just. Be just, that is near to righteousness, and fear Allah. Indeed, Allah is acquainted with what you do. إن الله يأمر بالعدل والإحسان وإيتاء ذي القربى وينهى عن الفحشاء والمنكر والبغي يعظكم لعلكم تذكرون. Indeed, Allah orders justice and good conduct, and giving to relatives, and forbids immorality and bad conduct and oppression. He admonishes you that perhaps you will be reminded. صدق الله العلي العظيم. Holy true are the words of God, the Great.
For that wonderful recitation of the Holy Quran. In a narration attributed to the commander of the faithful, Imam Ali ibn Abi Talib, peace and blessings be upon him and his family, he is narrated to have said that justice is the shield of the nations. My dear brothers and sisters, we see what happens when that shield gets destroyed and injustice is allowed to permeate into the society and destroy humanity. Tonight, you're going to hear from speakers, activists, and scholars whose goal is to shed some light on the injustices that are taking place all over the world, and to bring those injustices to light so that we can do something about them, stop them, and raise awareness. At this time, we'll be hearing from local activists who will be presenting the various injustices and atrocities that are going on throughout the world. Injustices in places like Yemen, Palestine, Nigeria, among others. To start off these series of presentations, we will first be hearing from Sister Rida Ali, who will be talking about what is going on in Palestine.
Assalamu alaikum, my name is Rida Ali. I am a student at New York University, and this past January I was given the opportunity to go visit Palestine. I wanted to share a couple of pictures and videos from my trip with you all and talk about what I saw when I was there. Now, when we talk about Palestine, we often think about what we see in the news or the conflict that's going on, but Palestine is so much more than that. I was so overjoyed to see the people, the locals, al-Aqsa Mosque, the culture, the food, and take inspiration from the hope that these people had even after surviving the longest military occupation. If there's one thing that I learned after visiting a refugee camp in Jericho or going to the last standing keffiyeh factory in Hebron, it's that the Palestinian people have hope, and that's what keeps their resistance alive. But without access to internet or the proper channels, they're not able to share their stories and their struggles. That's why it's so important for us to learn about Palestine, speak about Palestine, advocate for Palestine, and let the world know what's going on. Like the quote by Hussein ibn Ali alayhi salam says, "Those who are silent when others are oppressed are guilty of oppression themselves." So let us use our voices and our privilege and our power and our resources to advocate for the people of Palestine as well as all the marginalized groups around the world. Thank you so much.
Palestine. Palestine, the land of fresh waters, now tastes of corruption and of exploitation. Palestine, where the earth no longer smells of freshly turned soil carrying the scent of a 72-year-long occupation. Palestine, whose olive trees are now bare carrying the fruits of displacement, dispossession. Palestine, where home no longer feels like home with checkpoints and borders, division among its nation. Palestine. How many poems must we write in loving memories of those we've lost? Occupation, a catastrophe, state violence, a disaster, ethnic cleansing, a tragedy. How many infants and children, adults and the elderly, how many people of all ages and all races must we supply to paint pictures you would see? The children of Palestine, remembered by UN figures, hollow are their amendments when these soldiers become grave diggers. Bodies fall, bodies protesting, bodies buried and disconfigured. Taxpayer money, they say, taxpayer tanks, taxpayer triggers. Liberation, liberation, they whisper, they yell. This is occupation, it is genocide, you must tell. Liberating they come, liberating they go, undoing the fields that generations did sow. Protest, raise your fists, put up a fight, raise their next revolution, raise their next plight. Injustice, humiliation we do not bear. These walls of oppression you will see us tear.
अर्ज़ है नग़्मा-ए दर्द फ़िलिस्तीन जो लहू हमको रुलाता है, लहू हमको रुलाता है, लहू वो बेगुनाहों का, बिलखना ज़ख्मी बच्चों का, तड़पना दुखिया माँओं का, बला के जुल्म से नौजवानों का वो भिड़ जाना, सितम के सामने फिर सर बुलंदी से वो डट जाना, लहू हमको रुलाता है, लहू हमको रुलाता है, गुरूबे आफ़ताब हर दिन कि जब हर सू फ़िलिस्तीनी मशाले हक जलाते हैं, अंधेरा और ज़ख़म ताज़ा मका टूटे हुए फिर भी मुजाहिद मर्द मैदा ईमा से कवी जज्बे सजाते हैं कि फिर रोशन सुबह होगा चिराग़े हक मकानों में, तुलूए आफ़ताब होगा खुदा से लौ लगाते हैं। मुक़द्दस वो मका खालिक का जिसे घेरे हैं सब जालिम, शिकंजे से जफाकारों के वो आज़ाद भी होगा, रवा फिर दहर में हर सू निज़ामे बारिला होगा, यही खालिक का वादा है, यही खालिक का वादा है कि जब हक आमदी होगी तो बातिल ताकतों का अर्ज से फिर खात्मा होगा। लहू हम रो चुके बस अब, लहू हम रो चुके बस अब, उठो है वक्त बेदारी, तुम्हें अक्सा बुलाती है, सदाएं कुद्स देता है, उठो और जोर बाजू से शिकस्ता जुल्म को कर दो, बनो फातेह बनो गाजी, करो परचम बुलंद हक का, दिखा दो तुम में जिंदा है शऊरे कासिम सुलेमानी, लहू हम रो चुके बस अब, लहू हम रो चुके बस अब, फिलिस्तीन आज़ाद अब होगा।
Next, I'd like to introduce Dr. Fatima NAQVI. Dr. NAQVI is a board-certified physician in family medicine, geriatrics, palliative, and hospice medicine, and completed a palliative care fellowship from Harvard University. Dr. Fatima NAQVI.
Assalamu alaikum, everyone. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Working as a geriatrician for almost a decade here in America has been a very humbling experience for me, especially in these times where COVID pandemic is happening all over the world, not just in one country. Let's just take a brief moment to touch upon and review some of the ethical principles that we abide by in our day-to-day life. When we follow these principles, they raise our standards, not just as a humans, but also bring us to the level of angels, as what they say. Ethical principles such as beneficence, that means do good, no matter what you are doing and where you are. Another ethical principle is non-maleficence, that means to do no harm. The other two ethical principles I will be talking about is justice, which is to be just, to be fair, to be honest, no matter what situation you are in. The last and the most important ethical principle I feel, which is most important, especially in these times, is equity and avoiding inequity. These principles are being accepted universally and being followed upon no matter what culture, society, religion, race, or location you're working with. Such times have brought us very close to many other people and the community and the families who are suffering throughout the world, especially and including places like Palestine, Kashmir, Syria, and Afghanistan, where so many families, the common families who have not harmed anybody for any reason, are getting succumbed to the injustice and oppression. I would like to take a brief moment and have us pray for them and have us think about where we are going as a society in general, where our world is going as a general in terms of how we maintain these ethical principles, how we at our own personal level, what are we doing to protect these principles? What are we doing to protect these people who are being oppressed for no reason? Let's take a moment and think and see what can we do at our personal level to support these people, to raise our voice for the injustice and inequity, and to support these people at a bigger level with our families to their families, with our community to their community, and to bring peace in the world, all over the world. Let's pray together and let's work together for a better tomorrow. Thank you.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم إنما السبيل على الذين يظلمون الناس ويبغون في الأرض بغير الحق أولئك لهم عذاب عليم. The cause is only against the ones who wrong the people and tyrannize upon the earth without right. Those will have a painful punishment. Assalamualaikum. My name is Layla Ali and I would like to share some poetry with you. O children of Yemen, we will never forget you. When the world will talk about famine, you will be remembered. When the world will stay silent, you will be mentioned. When the children will run out of hope, we will remember that you almost didn't exist on the globe. O children of Yemen, we failed you. We failed you as a human. Salawat.
Assalamu alaikum everyone, my name is ZAHRA ABBAS and today I'm going to be talking to you about Yemen. If you don't already know, Yemen is currently facing the largest humanitarian crisis in the world right now. Although Yemen has suffered financially for a while, the people of Yemen continue to suffer due to the lack of financial stability. The broken economy has taken a larger hit with the humanitarian crisis. According to the Human Rights Watch, Yemeni activists and journalists have been harassed by Houthi and other government-affiliated forces. Many innocent civilians have lost their lives from intergovernmental and organizational issues that have nothing to do with them. There is clear evidence that links Saudi's coalition to killing innocent children in Yemen through armed conflict. Yet as of 2018, the United Nations still considers the coalition steps to improvement. Saudi is also restricting imports. According to the Human Rights Watch, fuel that is needed to power generators for hospitals and pumping water has been blocked. Not only am I hurting for the people of Yemen that are suffering so greatly, but I am infuriated at the United Nations for not taking actions against these coalitions that are constantly killing innocent people. The people of Yemen deserve better. They deserve justice. They should not have to suffer another government's political agenda.
Hi everyone, I am so excited to be a part of the virtual Jerusalem Day and so honored to be able to share with you all my story. I am a Palestinian American and the current director for New Story Leadership, an organization that aims to equip a new generation of Israeli and Palestinian leaders with the tools needed to create political, economic, and social change. I was born in Hawara, a small village right next to Nablus, that's in Area C of the West Bank. And when I was a little kid, around 3, we moved to the United States for a better life. And it was a much better life. I was your typical immigrant child. I did my parents' taxes at age 12. I learned English all by myself. And when the tragedy of 9/11 hit, there was a huge wave of Islamophobia that hit my community and communities all over the United States. At that point, as the only Arab girl in school, everyone looked to me for answers, as if I was the representative of the Arab world. When I went back to my parents, they were pretty scared and told me to ignore the questions and not talk about it, because as Arab parents, they had a huge stigma against politics. And so I did. I ignored it and I became silent and anxious about it, anxious almost about my own identity. And slowly but surely my parents noticed that, and they took a drastic step and decided to move the family back to Palestine. At age 15, I moved back to Hawara, the village that I left behind when I was only 3. And I didn't anticipate or understand what I was walking into. The first few weeks there, I remember seeing IDF soldiers everywhere, on my way to school, to the hospital, in my rooftop. And as a Palestinian that grew up in America, it just looked so unnatural to me. And I used my Brooklyn feistiness to always make sure that they understood that this was not okay. And I remember a particular incident when my aunts invited us to a feast to kind of welcome us into the town of Hawara. And I was just in awe by the hospitality and the beauty of everything and the laughter and the kids playing. And like most things in the region, it snapped really quickly for the worse. There were clashes happening outside with Palestinian kids throwing rocks at Israeli soldiers, and we saw the intensity, we felt it, and a canister of tear gas fell into my aunt's house, and instantly, the room filled with a lot of smoke. It burned our eyes. I couldn't breathe. It chokes you. And I just thought to myself, what is going on here? And I remember hearing my mom and my aunts debating about whether to open up the window to get some fresh air so we can breathe, or to keep it closed so the IDF soldiers don't think we're up to something and shoot at us. And sitting there in that moment, where there was a decision to be made on whether to breathe fresh air or not, really stirred something in me. My aunts decided to open the window, And that's when I saw a Palestinian teenager killed, shot by an Israeli soldier. She was a woman, and she received high fives from the rest of the soldiers that were a part of her squad. And when I saw the celebration of death like that, I had two options: stay mad and angry and frustrated, or take that anger and frustration and use my voice. So I did. I applied to New Story Leadership, and I spoke in front of Congress members and made sure that they were aware of what was going on. I think if more and more younger people from all over the world had the opportunity to speak to their leaders and be that voice that isn't there, we would be in a completely different world. So today, on Jerusalem Virtual Day, I want to say to everyone listening, thank you for listening, and thank you for joining the conversation.
The UN considers Yemen as the current greatest humanitarian crisis in the world.
The greatest catastrophe in Yemen is the aspect of aid and relief. Saudi Arabia created a land, sea, and air barrier for supplies to be received. Food is scarce and doctors do not have sufficient drugs to prescribe. Saudi Arabia launched a campaign of airstrikes, claiming to target enemies, but in fact are targeting many civilians. The Houthis in Yemen expressed goals to combat economic underdevelopment and political marginalization. They have made fighting corruption the centerpiece of their political program. According to the Yemen Data Project, more than 17,500 civilians were killed and injured since 2015, and a quarter of all civilians killed in air raids were women and children. More than 20 million people in Yemen are experiencing food insecurity, and 10 million of them are at risk of famine.
When I see food, I think of the starving children around the world. In Yemen, thousands of innocent people are victims of a terrible war. The United Nations has confirmed that at least 7,500 deaths have happened in Yemen because of Saudi Arabian attacks. In 2019, there were over 100,000 deaths. Others say that the numbers are higher. Even hospitals have been attacked. Many times, food supplies are not allowed into the country. People say that 85,000 children have died from severe starvation between 2015 and 2018. In this month of Ramadan and always, I feel very sad and worried about starving children in Yemen. I want them to have justice and peace. I want children to have food and peace everywhere.
A mystery lies in northwestern China, where over 85 camps holding 1 million Chinese Uyghurs have been discovered since 2017. They are camps with watchtowers and barbed wire fences the Chinese government calls re-education centers. Yet, they are camps where Uyghurs cry out from the pains of beatings, detainment, and interrogation because of their faith. In 2017, laws prohibited hijab and dozens of mosques were demolished. Since then, communist ideals have been enforced, and any resistance, any adhering to the religious views and practices, is punished severely. 22 countries have condemned Chinese leadership of disturbing reports of large-scale arbitrary detention of Uyghurs. Recently, the US and 30 other countries have described the camps as a horrific campaign of repression.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Assalamu alaikum to all who are watching. Today we'll be discussing the challenges our dear Muslim brothers and sisters have been facing in India for the past several months now. On December 11, 2019, the Prime Minister of India has passed a law known as the Citizenship Amendment Act. This law creates a path for Christians, Jews, Hindus, people of all other religions to become Indian citizens except Muslims. People from Afghanistan, Pakistan, Bangladesh, all around the world are allowed to become citizens of India except Muslims. This has obviously caused great turmoil in the country, especially in the New Delhi region, as people are now protesting this illogical move. Muslims and non-Muslims have taken to the streets asking why this law excludes the Muslim people. This is obviously religious persecution. All members of other faiths are allowed to apply for citizenship except Muslims. In response to this peaceful protest, the property and well-being of Muslims has been put at great risk. They are being beaten left and right by Hindu nationalists. A woman and her infant were buried alive. Cars and property of our dear Muslim brothers and sisters have been burned and destroyed. And what makes this matter far worse is that the police are not doing anything to help out the citizens of the country who they're meant to protect. In fact, in many cases, they are aiding in this destruction and aggression against the citizens of the country. Hundreds of Muslims have now left the city and moved away from this oppression and corruption. Hate is openly being preached and no one has said a word. It is our responsibility to take action. We are the wasilas Allah has made to protect and liberate the oppressed. Please spread this message far and wide. For more information, please follow our Instagram account at DC Muslims United. That's DC Muslims United. Until next time, masalama.
The current Saudi Arabian regime has been responsible for countless deaths and injustices. According to Human Rights Watch, since March 2015, about 90 unlawful attacks have been carried out that have affected homes, markets, hospitals, schools, and mosques. A coalition attack on a wedding in April killed 22 innocent people and injured 50 more. An attack on a school bus in August killed and wounded dozens of children. The ruling Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman, who has been cited as the source of several oppressive attacks on innocent people, has continued to show sectarian favoritism by banning practices of certain sects and beliefs, even within their own mosques or establishments. The injustice of his government has left millions in fear for their lives and safety. I denounce the injustice in Saudi Arabia and stand with the oppressed there, in Palestine, and all over the world.
Since the beginning of time, the land of Jerusalem has been the source of unity for Jews, Christians, and Muslims as a whole. In Judaism, Jerusalem has been known as the city where the temple of God stood. In Christianity, this land is where many events in the life of Prophet Isa took place. And lastly, for Muslims, Jerusalem is the first Qibla and the burial site for many of our prophets. Palestine is a land that unifies all three religions. It belongs to every single individual from the Ahlul Kitab. Until the League of Nations created a mandate. This mandate claimed that Palestine is now a territory of Britain. This gave the power and opportunity for the British government to issue what is known as the Balfour Declaration. Right after this declaration, ethnic cleansing started to take place. 100,000 Muslims were slain, 2/3 of the population, about 800,000 Palestinians, were forced out of their homes and driven away from their lives. 5,000 occupied Palestinians are now slaughtered every single year. Visit bdsmovement.net. Follow us on Telegram and Instagram at DC Muslims United to stay up to date on the actions you can take.
Never again is happening now. Now it stabs the open ear. For who can hear the deafening cry of truth against a lie? Truth calls out the orphan's mouth as she screams in agony, starving, thirsty, all alone in Yemen's insecurity. Under shocks of tyranny, a man lies stripped of sense, no sense of meaning, void of freedom, monitors the Uyghurs. Weaker than the eyes can see, in disguise as equal war, rages Palestinians, raided by explosives, denied of education. But who can hear the deafening cry of truth against a lie?
Assalamu alaikum everyone. Today I'm going to be reading a poem about Syria and Palestine. For those in Syria who have lost hope, for those in Palestine who have lost their home, our hearts beat for you. You may have lost it all, but we haven't. You may have lost it all, but we haven't. To see the tears of the unborn and the wrecks of the destroyed state displeases me and cracks my heart. We cry for you and we pray for you. Day and night we pray for you. What is life? What is this life as it is? The world is a terrible place. To see people die by the minute, by the second. To watch a nation become dust. For a genocide to be seen as normal. Are we not our own problem? Have we not created monsters among ourselves, in our veins with the same blood, our skeleton with the same bones? Bones connected in the same way, only differentiated by our skin color or by our mother tongue. How can we do this to our own? How can we? Stones for our hearts, frozen hearts, cold-blooded devils, hidden under the skin of humans. What have we made out on our own? Syria and Palestine, you have struggled enough. Jannah, inshallah, is yours and ours. You will see your win, inshallah, if not now, but in the afterlife. Don't give up yet. We haven't given up on you. Your home is ours. Prayers will be led back to you. Salawat. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad.
Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Imam Hussein said, surely the unjust will not be successful. Those who are silent when others are being oppressed are guilty of oppression themselves. Why are Palestinians protesting in Gaza? 95% of water is undrinkable, only 4 hours of electricity per day, 45% unemployed, 46% of kids suffer from acute anemia, 50% kids express no will to live, 2 million denied freedom of movement. It is important to raise our voices and support all those who are facing injustice and oppression throughout the world.
Free, free Palestine! Free, free Palestine!
अल-कुद्स तो याद करते हैं, बाइकाट इसराइल को भूल जाते हैं। अल-कुद्स तो याद करते हैं, बाइकाट इसराइल भूल जाते हैं। फ़लस्तीन तो याद करते हैं, कश्मीर भूल जाते हैं। फ़लस्तीन तो याद करते हैं, कश्मीर भूल जाते हैं। ये हमारी बदनसीबी है, ये हमारी बदनसीबी है। हम हर काम अधूरा करते हैं, हम हर काम अधूरा करते हैं। हर साल सफ़रे हज्जो ज़ियारत करते हैं, हर साल सफ़रे हज्जो ज़ियारत करते हैं। फिर पूरा साल मकसदे हयात पामाल करते हैं। हर साल सफ़रे हज्जो ज़ियारत करते हैं, फिर पूरा साल मकसदे हयात पामाल करते हैं। दुश्मन की दुश्मनी तो याद है, दुश्मन की दुश्मनी तो याद है। दोस्त की गद्दारी भूल जाते हैं, दोस्त की गद्दारी भूल जाते हैं।
Next, I'd like to introduce Evelyn Gansglass, who is an active member of the Bethesda Jewish Congregation in Maryland and serves in several leadership roles. She most enjoys serving her communities, and among the many ways are helping provide refugee support and furthering interfaith relations. Miss Evelyn Gansglass.
Hello, my name is Evelyn Gansglass. I'm a member of the Bethesda Jewish congregation. Given the global pandemic in which we find ourselves, I thought I would say a few words about the concept of social justice, which deals with a fair and equitable relationship between individuals and society. We often measure social justice by such things as the distribution of wealth within a society, social mobility, and social privileges, which include equitable health outcomes such as the incidence and prevalence of disease and death rates. And we know how unequal these have been during the pandemic. And we also know that these health outcomes are very much influenced by socioeconomic status, the environment, and cultural factors. Social justice also includes opportunities for personal freedom, which at least in this country include disability rights, non-discrimination based on ethnic, racial, gender, and religious grounds. The pandemic has laid bare the failures of humankind, and by humankind I mean the governments and people of the United States and countries throughout the world, to address these injustices at any scale necessary. May we learn to change our ways in the coming years.
In Nigeria today, Sheikh Ibrahim Zakzaki, leader of the Islamic movement of Nigeria, is being held under oppressive conditions for standing up and speaking out against the tyranny of the Buhari-led government. In 2014, 35 of Sheikh Zakzaki's followers, including 3 of his own sons, were shot and killed by the Nigerian government during a peaceful Quds Day pro-Palestine rally. In 2015, in another protest, his remaining 3 sons and 348 other followers were massacred by the Nigerian army. He himself was also shot, and him and his wife were detained on this day. In 2016, the High Court of Nigeria ordered that he be released, but 5 years after the initial arrest, and he still has not been released. I stand for justice for Sheikh Zakzaki, just like I stand for justice in Palestine.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. Assalamu alaikum, dear brothers and sisters. Nigeria is one of Africa's biggest countries, with a population of over 109 million, of which 49% are Muslim. Since Nigeria's independence in 1960, the Muslim population has been treated with constant persecution and discrimination. Justice called upon one man to stand up against the communist and the FCS, Federation of Christian Students. At the time, Sheikh Zakzaki was studying economics, government, and sociology at Ahmadu Bello University in Zaria. After becoming a member of the MSS, Muslim Student Society at Ahmadu, Sheikh Zakzaki quickly moved up the ladder to become the Secretary General of MSS. He continued preaching Islamic values and challenged imperialism and corruption that occurred within the Nigerian governments. The Sheikh fearlessly spoke up against fraud of the public treasury. His words told truth that had been buried and ignored, truth that woke the public to the injustice their own government officials were committing. After finishing his studies at Abu, which by the way is yet to give the Sheikh his degree, Sheikh Zakzaki continued to preach Islamic political ideals, calling for a just system of government in Nigeria and demanding basic human rights for the impoverished and neglected. The Islamic movement has continued to serve the impoverished populations. They provide services such as healthcare and education for children and adults, as well as help to safeguard those in areas of Nigeria susceptible to violence. The Islamic movement has and is giving countless lives to protect the truth and bring the Nigerian government to justice. From Buhari's promises to completely defeat Boko Haram in 2015, to the release of Sheikh Zakzaki and his wife Muallima Zina and their promised medical care, to the current protocol that gives the president utter and direct control of the DSS, no questions asked, we must start to see the systematic failure that is occurring in Nigeria. And here, we see that the Islamic movement of Nigeria provides for us the best example of how to create change within our communities. It teaches us to fight from the ground up, to work as a tightly knitted community regardless of our differences, to understand and be educated of the system we live in, to help those who are impoverished and give to those neglected by this broken system.
Dearest oppressor, I thought I would always be afraid. Broken spirit, broken back, a shivering, shattered mess, I thought I would suffocate under all of this weight. Your hate and empty magazines make for one heavy load. I thought my only chance at survival was to swallow my pride and surrender, to keep my hands up when you shouted, keep my hands up or you would shoot, keep my hands up. I thought this black Muslim child's only chance in life was to become a constant apologist, giving away what was truly mine. I'm sorry for all the space I'm taking up. But yesterday, an old enemy reminded me that hands up is a position of power. Hands up is a position of power. Hands up is a position of power. So I prayed for the fortitude of Mahdi and the courage of Hussein, for the innovation of Khadija and the power of Zainab, because what is power if not what the Imam left us and what his family left us? And dearest oppressor, I am writing this letter to you because I know you would hate all of this strength I found. Use it as grounds to further your irrational fear and rationalize your decision to put a bullet through me, because anything with this much strength that isn't red like blood, white like you, or blue like that sky you claim to own doesn't deserve to breathe. But my hands are up, my hands are up, my hands are up. Don't shoot.
At this time, I'd like to introduce ZAINAB KHABIR, who's the co-founder of the Maryland Area Feed Program, Food for Everybody Every Day, which was founded in 2000. It is an essential program which provides free and quality food to the underprivileged in the Maryland, Virginia, and DC areas. ZAINAB KHABIR.
Assalamu alaikum and Ramadan Mubarak. You know, as we come out of the month of Ramadan and we are able to resume our regular schedule of eating whenever and whatever we want, I would just like to remind everyone of the immense privilege that we actually have in doing so. It's a privilege that 37 million individuals in the United States don't have. It's a privilege that 11 million out of those individuals are children who experience severe food insecurity. And so as we come out of a month that, inshallah, has been both one of upliftment and enlightenment, I would like to remind everyone of just the power that we each have to enact change in a community, both locally and globally. When I was younger and I was discussing, poverty and food insecurity with my family, we decided to create a nonprofit organization, and specifically a program within that organization called FEED. It stands for Food for Everybody Every Day, and it's a program in which we collect on a weekly basis 3,000 plus pounds of food that we then distribute to local families and local organizations and senior citizen living facilities throughout the DMV who are experiencing hunger. And so as we are commemorating the Day of Quds and we are remembering the struggle of Palestinians who experience severe hunger themselves just due to the ravishing of resources within the country, I really like to just remind everybody and implore everyone to really take the resources and the power and our own privilege that we have to really enact change in the community, both locally and globally.
A'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajeem. Bismillahir rahmanir rahim. Salam to my dear Muslim brothers and sisters. As Muslims, we oftentimes get lost in the problems that we face, that our brothers and sisters in faith face. We also have to remember that we are part of a human family as well. Imam Ali alayhi salam tells us that if someone is not our brother in faith, that they are a brother in humanity. And it's especially important for us to focus on the oppression that's happening very near to us. And as Muslims who are living in the United States of America, it's important for us to focus on oppression that's happening on the soil we're on. Not just the soil that's in Gaza or Nigeria, but right here in our current home. Today we'll be discussing the true oppression that the original indigenous people of this land here in America have been facing for hundreds of years now. From the very first year that the white European settlers encountered the indigenous Americans on this continent, the dealings between the two have been one-sided and unjust. When the Papa Bull of 1493 was signed, explorers were free to carry out genocide on the Native American people of this land. This bill allowed them to commit genocide against all non-Christians, basically stating that anyone who wasn't Christian was not considered to be human life. This was all for the glory of the Roman Catholic Church and the emperors and kings who served it. Native lives, land, and resources were all taken. Even when America fought a great war of independence from Britain, establishing the United States of America and the new government upon rights-based constitution was created, the attitude of supremacy and entitlement towards Native Americans continued. Although the US government seemed to take steps towards righting their wrongs, ultimately they fell flat. And from the land the US government decided to give the rightful owners of this land, they would oftentimes give up the worst portions of the land. In 2016, when the oil conglomerate Energy Transfer Partners began to build the Dakota Access Pipeline unlawfully, unjustly, indigenous people all around the world gathered together to fight this illegal and unjust act of colonialism. The world's media stayed focused upon them for more than a year as the court battle continued to decide whether the risk of contaminating the Missouri River, the water supply for several millions of people, would be allowed. And although this battle was fought truly well, at the end of the day, the indigenous people were forced to leave their land to the oil company. And even now today, the indigenous people are some of the last ones to receive aid in this medical crisis that we're facing right now in this country today.
At this time, I'd like to introduce Dr. Sel Harris. Dr. Sel Harris has a Master's of Divinity from the Union Theological Seminary in Virginia, as well as a Master's of Philosophy from the University of St. Andrews in Scotland, and a PhD degree from the Coptic Orthodox Theological Seminary, and a diploma in Islamic law from the Islamic Education Center in Potomac, Maryland. Dr. Sel Harris.
Assalamu alaikum and Ramadan Mubarak. My name is Sel Harris. I am speaking to you from my home in Virginia Beach, Virginia. I hope you've had a blessed Ramadan and you'll celebrate the Eid al-Fitr celebration this weekend. I've observed Ramadan for 25 years. It's something that's been very, very special to me. As we know, on Friday, we remember Palestine, and how Palestine was taken illegally and Palestinians were left without a home. And it's a time where Muslims all over the world think about issues of justice and other things that are wrong and what we as Muslims can do about that. I'd like to speak to you about that for 5 minutes tonight. I want to talk about issues of justice, and I want to do something I learned years ago when I was a graduate school at the University of St. Andrews. Dr. Mustafa, who was my Arabic professor, talked about the importance of using history to talk about the present so we can try to rectify wrong things that have happened to people. As you know, I am an American, and right down the road is Yorktown, Virginia, where the American Revolution ended in 1787. And I have this vision of all the framers, Franklin, Jefferson, Hamilton, John Adams, all of them standing at the York River, watching the British warships go down the York River, out of the Chesapeake Bay to the Atlantic Ocean and home. And all of a sudden, they think to themselves, oh my goodness, we won the war. What do we do now? And I imagine at that moment that Fatima, the daughter of the prophet, upon whom be peace, comes by and approaches the founding fathers. And she says, well, here you are, all a bunch of white men. You've won the war. Now what are you going to do? And I think she would tell them to remember that the revolution continues. It didn't just end with the surrender. They had to work to make a nation and to work on things that may have gone wrong. And I see her going to the two most important framers, Thomas Jefferson, the third president, author of the Declaration of Independence, and Alexander Hamilton. She says, men, you've won the war, but there's some things you've got to do. Number one, women don't get to vote. In your new country, you're only letting land-owning white men vote. You need to do something about that. Then I think that Fatima would take a look at Thomas Jefferson said, and I believe the enslaved West African Muslims who have been your slaves for 200 years, they're not free. Do they get to be free too? And then she would turn and say, and what about this land that you stole? Land that wasn't yours. What are you going to do about the Native Americans whose land it really was? And then I think that she would look at them and say, I, Fatima, know what it feels like to have something taken from you. Do you know the story of Fadak, my ancestral land that my father Muhammad the Prophet gave me? It was stolen from me, just like you stole land from the Native Americans, and just like you stole people, West African Muslims, brought them here and made them your slaves. What are you going to do about that? These things need to be taken care of. They're wrongs that have to be rectified. I want to close with this for something to think about this Ramadan. Sometimes doing random acts of kindness, as the Quran says, can bring back great acts of healing and reconciliation. And it is my prayer and hope for you, sisters and brothers, that you will think about things that you can do as American Muslims to heal injustice, to bring about freedom, not just for Palestinians, but African Americans, Native Americans, and yes, even American women who still make a third less than all men do. Again, I say to you, Assalamu alaikum, and have a blessed year.
Imam Muhammad Baqir narrates, when Imam Zainal Abidin approached death, he tightly held me to his chest and said, Son, I advise you a statement which my father Imam Hassan gave me when approaching death, that he received in turn from his father Imam Ali. O my dear son, never commit any crime against a person who has no support, save Allah.
KARBALA Kids was founded in 2017 in Northern Virginia with the vision to foster generations of children who will always work to reform and uplift their communities. It works to emulate KARBALA's timeless stand for truth and justice and encourage strength against oppression anywhere in the world. By instilling the values passed down to us by the Ahlul Bayt, we cultivate a new generation of global citizens who want to rid the world of injustice by following the path of our Imams.
Next, I'd like to introduce Brother Nahidian, who is the Imam of the Manassas Mosque in Manassas, Virginia. Brother Nahidian is very active in interfaith work. At this time, I'd like to introduce Brother Nahidian.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. كان حقا علينا نصر المؤمنين. It's revealed that the believers will become victorious. جاء الحق وزهق الباطل إن الباطل كان زهوقا. The falsehood is subject to destruction. Our dear brothers and sisters, it is your responsibility to rise up against these injustices. Thank you. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.
Next, I'd like to introduce Sheikh NAQVI, who is the president of the Mufid Academic Seminary. Prior to joining the PhD program at the Department of Arabic and Islamic Studies in Georgetown in 2014, he spent 16 years at the Islamic Seminary of Qom in Iran, where he studied and taught Islamic law, legal theory, and logic. He has also published 3 books. Sheikh NAQVI.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. Values are transnational. They are without borders. They don't know any nationality, religion, race, gender, or anything like that. As the lovers of Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam, or even as a human being, we need to speak our mind and we need to be free and stand against injustice no matter where it happens. Whether it happens back home in our own countries or here in the US, whether it happens in the Middle East or in the West, we need to speak against it. Today is the day that we need to speak against the injustice that happens in Palestine, in Yemen, in Kashmir. Our prayers and words matters. Your prayers and words gives hope to the resistance. Keep praying, and inshallah we will have a free, democratic Palestine. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.
Lastly, I'd like to introduce Syed Suleiman Hassan, who was born in Medina, New York. Growing up, he attended religious classes at the Hawza Ilmiya Wali al-Asr in Medina. After graduating from the University of Buffalo with a degree in business administration, he proceeded to the seminary at Qom, Iran in 1997. In Qom, he specialized in fiqh and history, and he returned to the US in 2007. Since then, he has served as a religious director at the Beit al-Ilm Academy and as president of the Ahl Bayt Islamic Seminary in Streamwood, Illinois. Syed Suleiman holds a PhD in Near Eastern Studies from the University of Chicago. Syed Suleiman Hassan.
Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. With the name of God, the Beneficent, the Merciful, peace be with you. When we look at the world around us, we see that it is filled with warfare, violence, hunger and poverty, so many forms of evil and injustice that are unimaginable to the human heart and soul. Even a pandemic that has spread to every corner of the world has not brought an end to warfare. Economic sanctions that have crippled whole societies and preventing people from accessing medicine that they need to preserve their health and well-being. And that tells us something very real and very painful about the state of humanity. That a crisis of global proportions has not been sufficient for us to put aside our animosities and work towards our shared good. But it's not just a story of despair. If you look around the world, you will also see people of limited means coming together to share with one another and help each other get through very difficult circumstances. You will see colonized and oppressed people standing up to their oppressors, asserting their identity, demanding their rights, and refusing to live in fear. That inspiration is the true story of humanity. Because as Islam teaches us, God is the source of infinite wisdom and mercy. And He puts us in this world as a test to see if we are willing to stand up for what is right. But He has promised us that not only in the hereafter, but even in this world, the cause of justice shall prevail. Darkness and evil shall be eradicated from every corner of the earth. Our struggle is to believe that promise and to live that promise. There are some people who think that the problem with the world today is that there is too much religion. But Islam teaches us that the issues that we see in politics and in society and with the environment and in the economy, all of those are symptoms. But the disease lies within the human soul. And the solution also lies in purifying the soul. And so we believe that the solution is not to eliminate religion from society, but to give humanity a greater appreciation for the religious message, which is to live with humility and a sense of obligation to serve God and serve God's creation, to advocate for those who are suffering, to stand up for justice, to look for solutions not just in the external world, but within our heart, and then to live our values when we deal with others, in all our words and our actions. It's inspiring to see people coming together, to stand with those in Palestine, Kashmir, Yemen, and here in the United States and many other places in the world, to say that we believe that the cause of justice unites humanity across all of those things that may divide us, and that it is a spiritual struggle in addition to being a political and an economic and a social struggle. Let us come together towards the end of the month of fasting, the month of Ramadan, when we revive the spirit of sacrifice within ourselves and think of all of those people less fortunate than we are, and what we owe them in our thoughts, in our prayers, in our actions. And let us make a commitment that we're not just going to have one rally or sign a petition or read an article and wish that things were different, but that we are going to devote our lives to the cause of justice by purifying our own intentions and our own actions, and by always advocating for the dignity and the rights of those who are being oppressed. If we do so, then we will have been true to the message of the month of Ramadan and the call that Allah has given us, that God has given us, to bear witness for and stand up for justice. May God grant all of us the ability to devote ourselves to that same cause that our beloved Prophet Muhammad and his progeny devoted themselves to be just and to work for justice. And may He bless us with the witness of the spread of justice throughout every corner of the world. Peace be with you. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.
This concludes our program. I would like to sincerely thank all of our speakers, our activists, those who have worked so hard to put this program together. And lastly, and most importantly, I'd like to thank you, the viewers, for tuning in. We really pray and hope that these inspirational stories of those individuals who are fighting against injustice inspire us to do the same. We pray in this holy month of Ramadan that we continue our stand against injustice throughout the world. And we pray for victims of injustice and oppression all over the world. And we pray to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to end their suffering through the spread of justice throughout the world. Jazakallah khair jazaa. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.